So we didn't know what we were going to do for our cold open. So we decided that I was just going to ramble for a little bit. And I just have to say, Nicholas Latifi does not know how to drive. Williams, please call me. You can't get worse than this. Shout out all my Mexicans. Shout out Sergio Perez. Cue the music.
Welcome back. It's episode 6. We just finished watching the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It is currently 2:30 here, so it is straight off the track pretty much. We'll be getting into the track changes that Jeddah had, some of the news from the weekend, qualifying, and all the highs and lows from the race.
Megan's lying a little bit. This is not right after the race. I actually had my lunch very quickly after this, and my tummy hurts a little bit.
Yeah, no, I like the use of tummy too, and not just stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeddah changes. So they were obviously there only a few months ago. It was the second to last race last year. Quite a bit of controversy on the track, just given how many red flags that they had. I would say that there were less red flags between F1 and F2 this race around. They did improve some of the visibility in a couple of the corners. Still pretty narrow and fast track overall. And then the barriers, they're all concrete pretty much. There were a few changes overall, but still a pretty blind drive for the majority of the time. And you saw that too in Schumacher's crash in qualifying, which we'll get into.
So before the race even started, in typical Formula One fashion, there was already kind of some controversy. They weren't sure if the race was going to go on. For those who don't know, there was a missile strike about 14 miles from the track, and there was obviously a lot of concerns. That's very close for comfort. We're not going to touch too much on it. Megan and I were saying we're not ethics, humanitarian commentators, experts. We obviously have our opinions on it. We don't really think it's super our place to be talking about it. There's a lot of discourse on whether we should be racing places like, this week it was Saudi Arabia. There was obviously a lot of talk about the Russian Grand Prix, which is also not going on, and like the places that Formula One holds its races. There's a lot of people who think that we shouldn't go places with like the best humanitarian track records. And I think that's a different conversation for a different day, because then you also get into the rabbit hole of, can you race in the US or the UK or really any other European country? But this is a little different because there was a literal missile that landed and struck not too far away from the track. And I think it brings in safety concerns for the drivers, and the drivers were definitely concerned. They held like a 5-hour meeting after Q2. Was it Q2?
It was P2.
P2. I'm sorry. They held a 5-hour meeting after P2. It seemed that they did not want to race. But we're here. The race went on. Megan, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, you did pretty much cover it, but I do think it says something knowing that the drivers came straight from practice into that meeting and had some concerns, and they obviously needed that time to truly understand why the directors and their bosses believed that the track or the weekend was safe to continue just after witnessing that. I can't imagine driving over 200 miles an hour and seeing fire and smoke, 14, 15 miles away. So I do credit to them just being able to go through that and have a weekend as tense as they did. But yeah, like you said, I don't think it's necessarily our place to say too much more on that. Just, there are other podcasts, I'm sure, who are maybe a little bit more experienced or knowledgeable in some, conversations like this that cover it enough.
No, episode 6, we're going to start getting into the details of world affairs and conflicts. It was nice to see that. Obviously these drivers are really competitive, but when they had to come together and kind of, put their voice out there, they were able to. And I think that was good. It'll be interesting to see moving forward if there's a couple drivers that have outspoken against racing at Saudi Arabia in general. I think Lewis Hamilton has. Sebastian Vettel hates racing there. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. There was some talks about maybe the race not going on. They ended up having it. Just something to keep an eye on.
So then going into qualifying after that very eventful Friday and Saturday morning, we had, of course, Mick Schumacher crashing in Q2, where he ran into the concrete barrier. I believe it was 33 Gs, so 33 G force, which is insane. I mean, obviously he wasn't feeling all of that impact that I don't know if a body could handle, but the car itself was hitting hitting the concrete at that rate, which to me just sounds. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that he was awake when they pulled him out and walking today and everything and is good to go for Australia. If you can put a picture of the halo here, there's a photo where the tire, his front tire, is hitting the halo when he hit into the barrier. And it's just crazy to recognize that, had that halo not been there, which it wouldn't have been a few years ago, I mean, it would have hit him directly in the face. And it's just a reminder, this crash, of how dangerous these tracks, these newer tracks and these street tracks can be, especially when they have, different types of barriers that they use, or just blind spots and things like that. There's not a lot of room for error on this track, which, I understandably so. It's a street track, it's newer, just the way it's constructed, it wasn't necessarily as easy as something like Spa, which has a little bit more room. But yeah, I wouldn't. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it was a scary crash. I felt bad. So Megan was not watching qualifying because you were doing your mom's surprise party. So I was
Yes.
texting Megan updates and I was like, oh man, her boy just had a nasty crash. But and I actually didn't see it for the longest time. So I was watching qualifying in my living room and we were leaving to go to my grandparents' house. And in the time that I turned off the TV in the living room, got in the car and turned it on my phone, he was just in the wall. And it happened really quickly. It happened really fast. It did seem to be just kind of like a driver error thing, which we briefly touched on. This is a very hard track to drive, does not leave the drivers a lot of room for error. Glad he's okay. It could have been really bad. No exterior injuries, no broken bones. You don't want any crashes, obviously, but you don't want any injuries that'll linger and kind of take out his season. Especially with Haas having a good car, it's a good opportunity for Mick. Glad he'll be okay and good to go in Australia.
And then on some lighter notes, after the remainder of
Yeah.
other lighter things from qualifying, of course, we had Hamilton out of Q1, which was a shocker for everyone. A little bit more embarrassing, I think, given that it was Stroll who pushed him out. Sorry about that. But yeah, it was kind of hard to see. He hasn't been out of Q1 since I think 2017 in Brazil, and then this is one of his worst since 2009. So brutal to see that. Do you have any thoughts on your boy Hamilton?
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. He's won a lot. He's losing some right now. Definitely was surprised because he's one of those drivers where whenever something's going wrong or like maybe not going the best, I'm always like, he'll figure it out,
Yeah.
Like, and he just kind of never did. Does suck that Stroll was the one who pushed him out because I don't know, I just don't like him that much. Megan and I try and stay pretty neutral on like what we say about drivers because we know these are nice people. Not that Stroll is not a nice guy, but this is one of the drivers that we both kind of agree he's not our favorite. Regardless, yeah, something had to be wrong with his car because George still did okay. Interested, and we can get into it later because Hamilton had an okay race as well, all things considered. So not sure what was going on there. Not sure what the differences between him and Russell's car are. I don't think they're that big, but
I know Hamilton had said today that he suggested some changes to the back of the car, the rear,
okay.
but he wasn't confident in them when he was driving. So you have to be confident in a track like that where you're making turns that are that fast and so blind. So I think he said that he didn't feel confident enough. And then when they asked him if he was confident today, he said no, which I was kind of shocked to hear too, because he's usually the guy like, yeah, no, we're fine. But it seems like they're really struggling with the car this year.
And I do think they'll figure it out. I'm never gonna bet against them. I don't know that they're gonna like championship figure it out, but I do think they'll figure it out. I think they'll be back up with the top teams. Mercedes is known for kind of making pretty good mid-season adjustments in the past. They haven't, even in all of their championship runs, they haven't been the fastest car like right out of the gate every single time. I think they adjust well. It just kind of sucks to see because it's like, oh man, I wish they could figure it out already. I'm obviously a big Lewis Hamilton fan, but I think that'll be all right. But more importantly, my boy Sergio Perez. I said it in Spanish too. Normally I say it with my American accent. No, Sergio Perez. Shout out to all my Mexicans. Shout out to Red Bull. I can't believe I'm saying that. Um, Last lap of qualifying just snatched P1 out of Ferrari's hands. It was super cool to see his first Q1 or his first P1 in qualifying in his 215 races. Took him a little bit, but he got there. And obviously he's more of a strategic driver. Like he's not really known for his pace. Super cool to see, especially because he wasn't on pace for pole after his first sector. It was after the second sector that he started dropping purple sectors, and it was like I was watching it and didn't expect it to happen, and then all of a sudden he finished his lap and he was just in pole. So really, really cool. Shout out all my Mexicans.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird record to hold, having the longest time in the sport before you get your first podium
Yeah.
or pole position. So yeah, but happy
No,
for
I
him. He
was
finally did it.
yeah, I was very happy for him. It was super cool to see. We'll get into his race later. It really was out of his hands, but neither here nor there. Shout out to Sergio Perez.
I also do want to note one more thing from qualifying: the fact that Ocon out-qualified Russell. I know we did talk about the Mercedes a little bit, but to see Alpine, we're going to talk about it too during the race, but Alpine is quite the team this year. I think we're going to see a lot more of them in that top 10.
Yeah, they're not bad. Not bad. I would even say they're good. All right, yeah. With that all out of the way, our race recap, race thoughts. Saudi Arabia 2022. First place, Max Verstappen. Second place, Charles Leclerc. And coming back in third place, Carlos Sainz. We can talk about the leaders in a little bit. I figured we could start out with AlphaTauri. Yuki was DNS, did not start. I don't exactly remember what was wrong with his car.
He lost his engine, and he had engine issues during qualifying too. So it just, I don't know. I mean, now that they have a weekend off, I hope that gives them a little bit additional time to kind of figure out what's going on and go into Australia, hopefully all set and well for the race, because that's an unfortunate way to end the weekend, of course.
Yeah, especially because AlphaTauri's been like steadily kind of climbing up the midfield as one of like the more faster cars, and Pierre Gasly has been one of the faster midfield drivers for a while now. He kind of had a pretty race. And
I'm surprised because he does great in street races. So yeah. I was a bit surprised. I don't know if there was.
Yeah, he finished in points, but I think it's because there was 7 DNFs. Yeah, he didn't really do much. I think the only time he really got airtime during the race was when he was getting passed by Hamilton. So I didn't see too much of him. Hopefully he can have a better race in Australia, and Yuki can get started and just as a team just do a little bit better, because they're one of the teams that I would like to see fighting with this next team, which is Alpine, which we've both talked about them today. They look pretty strong. I know Alonso had the DNF today, but he was running well.
Oh yeah, he was one of my contenders for driver of the week just because of the way he was holding off Ocon. That battle, of course, was quite entertaining, and then even his battle with Magnussen, that was great to see too. To see those two battle together. So yeah, I mean, he was really pushing it today, and I think the Alpine car in general is going to be great, and it seems pretty strong this season. I mean, far better than what the McLaren's showing right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I mentioned this to you. They have two pretty good drivers where the cars that they're competing with, maybe Alfa Romeo and Haas, some cars that will be around them most races. Their drivers, they have two inexperienced drivers with Zoe and Mick Schumacher. Obviously those guys are younger. That's nothing against them, but they maybe aren't as ready to compete with Alpine as Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen. So yeah, I think Alpine can kind of solidify themselves as the best of the rest this next 3, 4, 5 races. Hopefully, I think if of any of the teams if that are gonna push them, I think it's gonna be Haas because I think Mick's a little better than Zoe right now. I
Mhm.
think Kevin's a little better than Bottas right now. So we'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
with them. Yeah, it was really entertaining to watch Ocon and Alonso fighting, even though they did slow themselves down quite a bit.
Which is great for Botas, of course. I mean, I
Yes,
was
yeah.
surprised,
He almost passed them both at the same time. Like
which would
that's
have
how
been
much they
great.
were slowing each other down.
Yeah, did you see Alpine's social media at all during that
Yes.
time?
Yes, I
Ugh,
did. They were
so
funny.
funny.
I like when the social media teams have personalities. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, quality.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, no, so I think Alpine, besides Alonso's DNF, I think they had a good race. I don't where exactly did Ocon finish today?
that's a great question.
Mm,
I want to say, I almost want to say ninth.
Ocon finished sixth today. So that's pretty good.
Oh, you're right, duh, because he
Yeah.
held Norris off because Norris was
Yep.
trying to pass him at the last second, and Ocon said nope.
Yeah, no, that was a good finish for him.
Hmm.
Honestly, I if Alonso stayed in, I don't think George Russell would have beat him. I think Alonso would have gotten fifth today.
Yeah.
Um, but you mentioned Lando Norris,
Mhm.
McLaren, not great still, but they don't seem to be the last team on the grid, which is
No.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yes, I am so sad, first of all, for Ricardo. He was doing so well. I think he would have been in points today had his car not overheated or engine or whatever it was the case.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be the same problem that both Valtteri and Alonso had today at the same exact time, crazy enough. But yeah, I'm hoping to now that going into Australia, they have that extra week now to kind of figure it out. And, they're going into Daniel's home race. They haven't been there since COVID.
I want him to
So,
do well next
uh,
or next race.
I if he doesn't get in points, my heart will break
Yeah,
probably. Not to be
yeah,
dramatic, but
and
I
I feel bad for him. He's not driving worse than Norris right now.
no,
Like
he was
he
ahead
was
of
beating him
Norris.
all race. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I feel really bad. He had the early pit. I think he pitted on lap 8 and got on his
Yes.
hard tires. Um, but he was doing well. He
Hmm.
was he was overtaking. He was doing good. I would
Hmm.
have liked to see him finish the race. I think he would have been right there with Lando, if not right in
Yeah.
front of him.
Hmm.
Um, he's kind of getting a bad break. I feel really bad for the guy.
Me too. It's still early days, but we'll see. Hopefully, going into Australia, they can come off on a clean slate and get them some points for once.
Yeah, so I mentioned George Russell in fifth. Mercedes had a pretty low key day, with Hamilton starting in 15th or 16th or 15th.
15.
15th. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Hamilton starting in 15th, I mean, there was only so much that was going to happen. I think we didn't really expect George to be mixing up with the top four. Good on him for, holding a top 5 spot.
Hmm.
Lewis actually had a good race. Um,
Hmm.
a bit of unfortunate luck with the pits at the end.
Hmm.
He was not, so I think it was Alonso, his car stopped in the pit lane. So
Yeah.
the pit lane was closed. He was not able to pit under the virtual safety car, uh, which he had a 13-second gap on the car behind him, which I think he would have been able to pit, get in, get out, and still
Yeah.
hold his position. And on fresh tires, I honestly think Lewis would have finished like 7th or 6th this race
Oh, yeah.
because he was doing pretty well. Yeah, what did you think about Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, I think George was just vibing the whole time. I
Yeah.
mean, no one was really attacking him. He wasn't really attacking no one. Which I mean was great. It could have been, worse for him. So I think he had a pretty good race overall. With Hamilton, he'd come up pretty well in the beginning and was in that top 10. Then he had to pit, and it's unfortunate that they waited so long to pit too. And I think they, had they had that opportunity to pit when they could have, Yeah, like you said, he would have probably been P6 or something. But of course,
Yeah.
you have to pit at least once during the race, and so no matter what, he was gonna have to do it. And so the fact that the pit lane closed so close to the end with Alonso, that by the time he was able to finally get in, I mean, there was hardly any time for him to catch
Yeah.
up. So glad he made it into the points. I mean, P10. I don't think he
Yeah.
was super thrilled about it, but it's 1 point, so
Yeah,
something,
it
I
is.
guess.
It is what it is. The timing with the virtual safety car was tough. I think if he got in under the virtual safety car, I think he would have caught Russell.
Oh,
um,
probably.
yeah,
But even but even with the safety car too, that's what kind of screwed over Perez. I mean,
yeah.
that was
We can
if
talk
you
about
want.
that now. So Sergio Perez obviously started in pole. He did everything perfectly. He ran a perfect race, and then Ferrari faked Red Bull out a little bit on the pits, but regardless, it's not the end of the world. Perez goes in pits. He's on fresh tires, loses a couple spots, but he was running really well. And then Nicholas Latifi again impacting the outcome of too many races because he doesn't know how to drive.
Mhm.
He let me before we even talk about Perez, let me just say we talked about how they tried to make this track safer. Latifi crashed on one of the turns that they made wider. He still hit the wall. I don't know how long Williams can just let him keep crashing. I mean, like at some point, the cars he crashes has to cancel out the money he brings in.
Yeah. It's also I like that. I like what you're leading with Latifi after we just said that we're not biased on any of the drivers.
I'm so sorry. I actually don't really have any opinion on Nicholas Latifi besides he just
Yeah.
keep okay. So I'm a very new Formula One fan. I've watched 3 races live and he has crashed 2 of them and impacted the outcome
Yeah.
of the race. He's 66%. That's Hall of Fame. That's like double Hall of Fame baseball batting averages. Like what? Does he
Yeah.
know how to turn the car on?
I will be surprised if he comes back next year. And I'll honestly be kind of disappointed because that could honestly be contributing to why Williams is struggling in the points right now. I mean, I
Yeah.
do feel bad for Albon. I don't think they have a great car in general right now. They're definitely in the back with Aston Martin. But at the same time, like Latifi's been in this for a few years now, and he just should not constantly be back. Like the fact that Zoe is constantly like ions like ahead of him, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's
I
tiring.
he really and he obviously didn't do it on purpose. I,
Mm.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think he can help it at this point. But yeah, Checo pitted, and then once he got out, immediately Latifi crashed, and then everyone else just got to pit and hold their position, and Checo was just stuck in 4th place. By the end of the race, I mean, he was gaining, but by the end of the race, he
Mhm.
set the fastest lap time until Leclerc,
Mhm.
I think, did it eventually. I just got so carried away. I had to stop recording the podcast for a sec because I just completely froze. That's how upset I was for Checo. Regardless, he ran a good race. He didn't mess up. He had a good start. He had good pace.
Mhm.
Had that unfortunate timing with the pitting and the accident not happen, he probably could have been there to try and win.
Mhm.
Uh, Megan, what did you think?
Oh, brutal. I mean, I was rooting for Perez. I was really hopeful for him today. I'm glad, that he was still able to keep that P4. I
Yeah,
think he could have, I don't know. I don't remember how close him and Sainz were other than whenever he had to give back the position. But it would have been nice too to see him a little bit more competitive in the front too. It's just unfortunate the way that the timing and stuff happened.
yeah.
Yeah, and like with Latifi too, this is the second time I think that he's ruined it for Red Bull, or at least like hurt their, the results specifically. So,
Yeah.
kind of brutal. Maybe there's more opportunity soon. But
I do think the silver lining here, Checo looks a lot more comfortable in the car this
oh
year.
yeah.
I do think that there will be opportunities for Perez to compete for wins, here and there throughout the season. So I'm excited to see that. And I also think it's cool that Max seems to really like him. And like
Hmm.
anytime there's been like a chance to help him out, Max seems willing to do so, which is surprising because Max is very cutthroat and doesn't like seem like that kind of guy, but there's a lot of mutual respect there. So I think maybe like in Checo's home race in Mexico City, like if there's a chance for Checo to kind of take that win, I think Red Bull and Max would be more than
Hmm.
happy to help that happen.
Oh yeah, and you could see how happy Max was in his interview
Yeah.
yesterday when he got his pole position. So it's great to see teammates encouraging the other and being supportive, knowing that they're also competing with each other at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for him, and I think that they're going to have a really close race this year.
And I just generally too, I'd be interested to see if uh teams moving forward try and find a driver pairing like this if they have a clear number one guy. Checo is
Mhm.
never going to win a world driver championship. And he seems very aware that he is the number two driver,
Mhm.
but he is fast enough to like compete. And I think they seriously have like the perfect pairing. Some people might say Ferrari because both their drivers are threats to win a race every week, but eventually it might become an issue where I don't think there would
Right.
ever be an issue between Max and Checo. I think it's very clear what's going on. And I think they have the mutual respect to kind of work really well as a team.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think too, coming going, further into the season, we'll see Charles and Carlos kind of fighting it off a little bit, kind of like how we saw Ocon and Alonso today. I'm wondering if we'll get a little bit more of that from the Ferrari team because we know that they're not picking a number one driver right now. And I hope that Sainz to, gets a little bit more opportunity early on to win some races so that,
Yeah.
he isn't back into second seat driver.
And actually, if we could just touch on them before we get to Max, I do think Carlos needs to win a race in the next couple. Like he has to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he will be the number two driver. Because I mean, if Leclerc keeps this up and jumps out to a big enough lead early on in the drivers'
Hmm.
championship, then it's like, okay, yeah, we need to get this guy to win because he's the one who's up front. So Carlos needs to win a race soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about Ferrari first, or do you want to talk about Max?
Yeah, we can just finish off on Ferrari and then get into Max.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah,
Uh,
for go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, and even too with like our driver of the week, I think we were both pretty close on like who we were going to pick. Ultimately, we went with Max, and we'll get into him. But I think Charles had a great race too today. He was holding off the front after Perez pitted. For the majority of the race and had a great fight, against Verstappen. He had the fastest lap for a large part of the race too. And then again at the end, took it from Perez. So, I think he did his best. I don't think he could have really done any more. And then again with that first sector yellow flag at the end, it could have maybe impacted whether or not Charles could have passed Verstappen. I think had there been one or two more laps, it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But they both did a great race today.
Yeah, and Charles has had a strategy the last couple of weeks we've seen that has worked really well, and I'm
Hmm.
interested to see if other drivers start doing it. He, when challenged by Max twice now, has let him pass just to be able to use his DRS to pass him again.
Hmm.
And last week, Max was extremely hot-headed and just kept trying to do it, and Charles just kept letting him go, and then just using DRS and going right past him, and it destroyed Max's car. This week, Max had a lot more of a controlled race, controlled his emotions, and did everything at the right time. But Charles has been using this strategy really, really, really well. And obviously, you can't use DRS when you're in first place. So just to have the trust and the confidence in yourself to just let someone pass you so that you can just use DRS after the next turn and pass them right back. I think that shows the sign of like a really good driver. And that brings us to both our race winner and driver of the week, Max Verstappen. Um, Not surprising, but definitely after last week was looking to have a bounce back in many different ways. And I think he did just that. Started in fourth position after qualifying, started the race,
Hmm.
came back and won. Uh, Held it together in the middle of the race when I'm sure he wanted to just go after Charles and you know, take the win convincingly, because it wasn't that convincing of a win. Charles was still there at the end. But you heard on the radio Christian Horner telling Max, like, hey, let him do all the work, let him destroy his tires right now. We'll get him at the end. And for once, Max did
Well,
not fight back. He did exactly that, and he came out with a win. Uh, What are your thoughts on that?
I'm proud of him. Honestly, he deserved that. I think
Yes.
I was shocked to see him, especially after I think last weekend. I was a little bit shocked to hear how emotional he was. I know they're all, there's high, it's intense, they're going at very high speeds. It's a lot of adrenaline. So they're feeling a lot of emotions. And I know it seems like Verstappen's always struggled with that aspect
Yeah.
during the races. So it was really nice to see him kind of keep it down, keep it cool, just focus on the long game strategy. And it worked. And,
And trust his team.
yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Which he's, when you're that good of a driver, I can get why you're going to be like, no, man, I know what I'm doing, but
Mhm.
he trusted his team today and he won. So maybe he can see that there's a reason he should. So I think that is all we had in terms of race recap. Megan and I were saying it was not a boring race, but it was a pretty straightforward race. Not a ton happening in the midfield, backfield, besides like some car overheating, DNFs. Pretty standard race up front with Ferrari and Red Bull. Had a good battle at the end there. Max ended up on top. Yeah, so we've got a 2-week break coming up before the Australian Grand Prix. So obviously we're going to be doing these race recaps after every race, but we do still want to kind of provide different content in between all that, just to, keep up the discussion, keep in with the sport. So I think something we were thinking about doing was kind of picking a team, and then me and Megan each pick a driver to, just do some research on and, present to our followers and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I think we're going to be doing Ferrari first, right?
Yes, yeah. Ferrari, they're one of the oldest teams. I think the oldest team right now on the track. And so we'll go over some history of the team and, the current drivers and all that. So,
Yeah, it'll be cool. So just a heads up to our loyal listeners. So we will probably be recording that next Thursday. I have a 10-hour flight on Friday, so I'll edit on there. So it'll be up either early the first week of April or towards the end of no, it'll be up early the first week of April. Whether it's the weekend or that Monday morning, I think Megan and I will decide that later. And then our race recap for Australia might just be a day late because I am going to Greece for 10 days and I will be getting back probably. I think the Grand Prix will go on while I'm flying back. So it'll just take me a bit to catch up and, get ready for all that.
but thanks guys for listening. We both appreciate, everyone that's been following us. We did hit 200 downloads over the weekend for our
Yeah.
podcast, which is really exciting.
I think Megan and I both thought we were going to be talking to like both of our fathers and like two of each of our best friends, but we have actually had some people listening. Thank you to everyone who has so far. It's been super cool. It makes it easier to do this, like all the time Megan puts into the social media stuff and all the time I put into editing. I can't tell you how sick I get of both of our voices by the end of that. But just seeing that we're actually kind of making a little bit of progress, it makes it worth it. It's been really fun. And I can't wait to keep doing it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for listening. Make sure you follow us on all the socials at Break Check F1 and subscribe. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
See ya.